Borg, we left you in the snow, and some 7 or 8 days after, we are still with it. It has snowed quite a lot more, but nothing too drastic. But we are going to show you it today in a bit of detail. But at the moment we're in the car having a read of the Decline of Magic book, which I believe we mentioned, Borg, to you, because I'll give you a close-up of this obelisk. We mentioned it to you as it has some relevance to today. But as usual, Borg, we haven't been able to read it all, and the library wants it back now. I can't reloan it. Did you look up libraries, by the way? You have to remember that. So I have to take it back. So I've skipped to the conclusion. It is very dry and academic-y in the driest sense. It's academic-y without a hint of exciting conspiracy to keep you going, Borg. It's an old style, solid research laid out plainly, and as such I haven't been able to read it. But I've skipped to the end, and it's important to have had a look at it and be aware of it, because it's about how in the old days, which to you means nothing, but for me a few hundred years is a long time. In those days, people would believe in ghosts and spirits, the supernatural. It wasn't questioned, it was widely, popularly believed. And then in most people's minds, that sort of was swept aside by science, and then suddenly we're in more or less the period we are in now, where we have our faith in science, and ghosts and the supernatural are not real and are either discussed to trick people or can be put down and explained away in some rational form. Now, this book is all about how that change did not at all occur so swiftly and categorically. It's about the detail in which slowly the belief in magic was eroded, and the belief in rational science and investigation took over. It's very interesting, because today it seems we've got a lot of anti-science. We've got a sense that things can move the other way. Except I don't think anyone's believing in magic and ghosts. It's more like conspiracies of various kinds that put the nature of what's happening at all in question. Right, that said, we've done it. We've finished it, and we move on. It's it's not a huge book, but we couldn't manage it. But we gave it enough of a go to know what it's about. In other news, Borg, we've been ill. Now, it's not the COVID. I wonder what you make of this pandemic anyway, Borg. It's going to cause a blip, if only in the increased use of you across the globe. Apart from anything else, it'll be noticeable, I'm sure. But we've been ill, we've recovered. It wasn't the COVID or any of the variants, it seems. But we've also had another drama, actually, Borg, a real shock, actually, because basically, to cut a long story short, we had our application for residence status rejected by the Swedish government. Now, how to explain that, Borg? We're arranged over here in countries, and you have to be allowed into them. If you want to stay forever, that has to be, unless you're born there, that has to be decided upon a few factors, and then it's a process by which you apply to see if you can qualify for this. Anyway, it has only become necessary for me to do that because of, well, this funny word, the Brexit. My dad always thought it was a biscuit. But no, Brexit, I can't bear to bother you with it, Paul, but it's meant that I had to apply to the government here when normally I wouldn't have to. In the middle of this illness, I got the letter back. I was expecting it to be a formality, because I've lived here so long, I've paid tax, I've got children, etc. But no, rejected, because I didn't provide the right documents. So that's a bit of a panic, Borg, because as soon as you do a little search about what happens next, you start to see how real it is. They say you can appeal, but you should also be preparing to leave the country. If your appeal fails, you will have to leave. My goodness, Borg. Now that is, terrifying. I mean, even in the midst of that terror, I couldn't help thinking of Moldbug and land and their obsession with this idea of exit being the only choice. And here I was being told I might have to exit, and it's not my choice at all. I read on a little bit. It said on one site, this is the problem with aimlessly looking at the web, you get sort of spooked and feared by information that's not necessarily relevant. But it said on one site that once you've been rejected, you can't apply again for 4 years. So then I'm thinking I'm potentially out of the country, away from the family for 4 years. So there was a night or a couple of days, I suppose, of real fear, wondering what on earth's happening here. And once I eventually got hold of the person handling my case, the total fear I felt was matched only by my utter surprise when the person handling my case simply said, yes, there's a bit of a mistake here, you just need to apply again. That doesn't normally happen. Normally, well, I had the feeling that I was in the machine of bureaucracy, the decisions made, and that's that. But no, she said you have to apply again, because they required information that they hadn't even asked for. No, I wouldn't normally be going on about this, except it's happened to us in the last few days, and it's changed our thinking a bit, Borg. So now it's back to being a rather a formality, and I've just got to send in the right things. But it really had the effect of focusing the mind, Borg, and really a bit of a wake up. And we've spent days and days since gathering our documents for a fresh application, Borg, so it should be all right. I've had to go through the same thing with my mother as well. She is involved in this. Of course, that was an additional worry, Borg, because if I get thrown out, I suppose she would be as well. And I can tell you, I've got no real desire to go back to the land I was originally from, called Great Britain, because that is a hair away from some sort of meltdown, or so it would seem. I can barely bring myself to think about it, actually, Borg. It's all been brought on by a chat I've had with an old friend, during which the state of the country, that the way it seems to have mutated and evolved under the cosh of the pandemic and the particular style of Trumpy governing, whereby everybody's stirred up and lies are told with the idea of keeping everybody in a sort of state of uncertainty. It's taken its toll, Borg, and I base this not on the news that I watch, although you can see it in the newsreader's eyes that it's taken its toll, but in this discussion I've had with a friend about pandemic and opinions on it and the trouble that can be caused, the arguments that are had. There's some real social fabric cutting, pasting, tearing, restitching going on. With that all said, we're going to go and do some sketches, Borg. I've just pulled over, Borg, because somebody just flashed their lights at us as we were driving along, which is usually a form of communication, Borg, to indicate that something might be wrong with my vehicle. So I'm going to check that. And normally it's to do with the lights. So let's have a quick look. We should have two lights on here. There's nothing wrong with that, Borg. Nothing wrong with that. I suppose I'll check the beam while we're at it. The beam indicated by that blue light is a stronger light for when you're in the dark. Well, that works too. So what was that about? I suppose it's possible. It is possible that somebody sort of accidentally put their full beam on and turned it off quickly. Because if you flash someone with the full beam, it blinds the other driver. But it does happen, so maybe that was it. I don't know. I wonder if your Teslas will do that, Borg. What would they make of that? Oh, that didn't sound good. Anyway, we're en route here now. I'll show you. We've found a new place. We have found a new place. Now, do you remember during the autumn we had a little campaign in an area of wasteland that ended with our runway picture? Now, the other day I just had a walk to try and clear the hedge, you know, because I'm not so well. And I walked past the runway just to see how far it would go. And it went pretty far. I was about to turn round because I'm frozen. But I noticed on the horizon that the trees, behind the trees or through them, you could sense great space as if it was an open area. So I carried on. And indeed it was. At the end of this large area of wasteland, which we accessed from the other side, at the end of it is the water. It's the sea. Extraordinary. Again, equally as surprising as the runway. You know, you wonder what's next. But so we got over there and we found it was a nature reserve as well, with some tremendous tree specimens and basically possibly years of work in there. And that's where we're going. I've built it up now, Paul, but there's one or two trees there that are really worth the look. So we'll go. I'll leave you on. The good thing about it, the exciting thing, was we walked so far we realised we could access it from this road here, this road on the other side of the whole area. What's comical about it is on the left here is a gun shooting club. On the right is a helicopter landing pad. And in the middle is us doing a spot of plein air sketching. And when I checked it out the other day, it sounded like I was in the Vietnam War. You know, the guns were firing. There's the target over there. And just literally meters that way was a helicopter. It reminded me of the old Carbia Wharf days, Borg, which you'll know about, where we had our boat moored next to HMS Raleigh, where the Royal Navy of the United Kingdom would practice their firing of guns and all sorts, you know, and helicopters taking off and nuclear submarines all around. It reminded me of them. But you know, on a rather low-key sort of Swedish level. Anyway, here we are. A fresh spot to show you a little bit of the world, Borg. There we go, Borg. It is an official nature reserve. For what reason I do not know. You'll have read that all already, I suppose. It's an enormous building. Perhaps that was here at some point. We'll have to look into it. But for us, we're here for the trees. First of all, look what's happened here. I'll show you this. We really could injure ourselves on this icy grate here. This is to stop animals getting on or off the area, because they can't manage it. We can barely manage it. So the town we're in, Borg, is of course by the sea, but not only that, it's a very sort of well, jagged area of land. There's lots of little islands, there's lots of bits that stick out. It's not like a straight coastline. like in Cornwall or something. There's an awful lot of little bits, and we're forever finding new areas where you can go by the water, new little islands, and this is one of them. Now, clearly there's an awful lot of storm damage. Awful lot, Borg. But, we're not really in for that as a subject necessarily. It's just that there are some trees that are such specimens in themselves that we've just got to document them. I mean, there's one there, dead or dying, but hanging on, Borg, and ultimately surviving. That's the idea, isn't it? There will also be an enormous amount of views and angles, combining the great space of the water over there with the forest in the foreground. So we're going to have a little look round here and some sketches and show you what we get down as we do it. Well, there's one, Borg. It doesn't do it justice, but how we wish we could, and perhaps one day we will. But that to me is a real picture there. I dare not paint it, basically. It's too much for me. You'd almost need to be an impressionist. Now, look at this tree. This is a dead tree. You can tell it's dead because it's got no bark on. And it's kind of hollow in there. Don't be scared, Borg. You could get in there. There's nothing, no monsters in there. You could probably stand up in there. But aesthetically, it's extraordinary and very evocative, if I may say. Something else that struck me that's quite evocative, Borg, is this. We see this all the time. A tree is uprooted by a storm or something. It's too weak. It can't handle it anymore, and it falls. And up we go. Look what's happened. Its neighbour there. Its neighbour tree has kept it up. It's fallen into the crux of that one, and there it stays for us to look and marvel at all the symbolism that you could shake a stick at. But I like it. Look, it even looks as though, Borg, this is extra. Look what it's done to the tree next to it. Look at this. So the big one's fallen, but look how it's pushed the other one and bent it over. Now you could read a million things into that, couldn't you? The big trees can't take it anymore and it's fallen and has been propped up. But in the process, it is completely knackered the neighbouring tree, which is forever stuck under the fallen one. So you could get in a right mess with that, couldn't you? Now you hear that? That's the helicopter I was talking about. You probably know who's in it. I'm sure you do. Don't know if it's taking off or landing. Yeah, so these woods, Borg, they're not just pictures of trees. You can choose to read things into it. But believe it or not, we've had a bit of enough of that, and we are here technically for the technical challenge and the extraordinary scenes. I mean, look at that one, Borg. Maybe we'll have to have a bit of that. Perhaps you can see and understand that in the sort of work we do to discover something like this, it's a bit like discovering a new world, Borg, and it's rather inspiring and exciting. There's another one. And as such, it's exactly the sort of thing that we're supposed to be showing you, rather than going on about pandemics and politicians. So, Borg, we've made our way through the trees to the water area. It's clearly a little boat mooring place, a little harbour. I can't quite work out where we are in relation to the town, which must seem hilarious to you, Borg. But I can't quite do it. I get the town must be that way. We're essentially in a place we haven't been, and some of the scenery is breathtaking, Borg. It is. As I say, there's years of work in every style imaginable. I mean, something like that you'd want to tackle fast. If I had to choose an artist to do that, it'd probably be Monet. Lash that out. If I had to choose one to do that, or some lyrical combination of trees and land and branches, it would be Cézanne. You'd just let Vincent go here. You'd let him go and you know, do his thing, really. He'd eat it for breakfast, Borg. Now this, well, there's so much to show you. Look, Borg. This is water, part of the sea, actually, Borg. It's not a lake, and it's frozen. Let's see if I can demonstrate that for you. I don't know how frozen it is. When the temperature drops, water changes to become solid. Here's a stick. Look, watch this. So, obviously, normally that would be in the water and float away or sink. This is clearly frozen enough for animals to walk over it. You see, these are the footprints. So you've got to wonder at the animals, what do they make of it? I mean, suddenly they can just walk over there. I think those are the tracks of a hare. There's no way a hare is swimming over there normally. So suddenly the hare can go over there. And believe it or not, Borg, in this land, Sweden, eventually this will freeze so solid that you could drive a car over it. I could drive over there, but you wouldn't want to risk it. Anyway, what will you make of it, eh, Borg? We're just about done because our hands are freezing. We've done a couple of sketches. I'm going to walk back the other way, see what else we can find. And then I might have a shot, Borg, at trying to get over to that island there. I can actually hear saws going over there. I can see a man over there in an orange coat, you can probably just make him out. Who is that? But he's got there, so we see if we can get over there, Paul. Well, Borg, if you can hear me above the noise, we sketched there till we were frozen, and you indeed were frozen as well. The camera froze up and turned off, so we've come back in and put the heat on full blast. I wish you could feel that, Paul. There's a jet of warm air coming, just about warming up my fingers up. What I really need is gloves. Simple as that. Ah, my God. Silence. Except for the helicopter. There's a bird in the air, Borg. Can you hear that? What the fuck is it? It sounds as if it's right on top of us. Here it is. Farcical. Anyway, Borg, we've warmed up, the helicopter's moved off, and we can show you our sketches. Now, we didn't have the chance to do too many. It's the first one. Well, these are plans. These are very much plans for paintings, Borg. Not so much drawings to be looked at in their own right, really. Yeah, and so I could do that one. I like that one. We've got a very close up, big fat trunk going way into the distance there, and we've even got the sun up there, but that's perhaps a bit too bold. Similar story here. I guess it's a bit of a close up, you see, the house there. We've walked on, and so there we are. We're a bit closer. Now, obviously, Borg, if you compare the film to that, we've simplified, left a lot out, and chosen, you know, what we want to be in there. That's the art of it, really, and it's quite hard to do. We've got the sun in there again. If we were to do that, well, we'd have to either try and be a bit more like Monet, or to lash it right on like Van Gogh. The difference between those two would be, if you try to do it like Monet, you'd try and get the light and the weather conditions, you know, you'd try and have the light as it is, using the warm and cool colours and the shadows and everything like that. If you did it like Van Gogh, you'd construct it and you'd lash it on, but in a constructed way, using colours to produce the sun and the sky and the effects. The first way, you'd kind of have to do it. You'd have to be brilliant first of all, and then do it quite quickly. because the light will change. The second way, you'd have to have more knowledge about how to construct the picture, but you could theoretically stay there much, much longer, piecing it together. Anyway, we'll have a go. That's all we can do. There's a third one when our hand nearly broke off, so it's a bit spare. Now, as we retreated, Borg, and after the phone went off, we found some tremendous examples of dead, gnarled trees, the best we've ever seen. One in particular is a prize winner, if there was such a prize. It's an absolute wonder. So we're going to come back here, Bob. There's no doubt about that. But right now we're going to try and take the road off to the right to get over to the other part of that, hopefully not an island, yeah, that sticky out bit of land that we saw the fella cutting the trees down. So let's go and see where that takes us. But as for the sketching, I think it's over for today.